In the city there lived a mouse. He dined on cheese and wine, but in the shadows waited cats, out hunting for his kind. In the country lived his brother, a life of grain and seed. No luxury, but bellies full, the fields gave all he'd need. Brother, he said, come live with me, there's peace within our fields. We have no feasts, just quiet nights, a life that's safe and real. The city mouse laughed, you call that life? I'd rather die with taste. I do as I please, not just to live, there's more to life than waste. So back he went to city's glow, blind to the eyes above, their steady gaze affixed on him, feasting on all he loved. Chainsaw Man by Tatsuki Fujimoto was originally published in Shonen Jump Plus in 2018, with an adaptation by Studio Mappa airing in October 2022. The story follows Denji, a teenage boy who gains the power of chainsaw limbs. After dying at the hands of the Yakuza, Denji is brought back to life thanks to his new chainsaw powers and is brought into the custody of Makima and the Public Safety Bureau. In exchange for a basic life, Denji must give up his and help exterminate devils, beings that embody human fear. Along the way, he learns about his own wants, desires, loves, and what it truly means to be alive. I love Chainsaw Man. I made a whole video about the manga back in the day. My thoughts about the show are the same. I also love it. Despite the criticisms he may have gotten, I think director Yu Nakayama did a fantastic job. He seems to really understand the heart of Chainsaw Man. While I do think the strict realism sometimes dulls the series' absurdity, the fact that he takes the source material seriously at all demonstrates just how much he understood the assignment. Sincerity is what makes any of this work, and I'd rather my complaint be that the show is too serious rather than not serious enough. But here I want to focus on one of my favorite arcs, the Reze arc, because this is where things start to get really interesting. With the release of the Reze arc movie, Chainsaw Man enters its darker half. Up until now, Denji's struggles have been physical. Here they start to become more psychological, slowly chipping away at Denji's psyche. If you haven't read the manga, I won't spoil what happens next, but be prepared, things get so incredibly weird. But I really do mean it when I say that this arc marks the beginning of that turn. For all the bombast and Sharknadoes in it, the story of Denji and Reze is a romantic comedy wrapped in cosmic horror. It might seem strange to call it a romantic comedy, but I mean that in formulation. At its core, this arc is a love story that begins with a lie. That in itself is a well-worn rom-com trope, a fake romance that slowly turns real. Think 10 Things I Hate About You, which if you didn't know, is a loose adaptation of William Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew. Like I said, this trope is well-worn. Fujimoto puts his own spin on this, of course, but the bones of the story are the same. The thing this trope relies on is a reversal of attitudes, a sincere lover turning jaded, a jaded lover turning sincere, and if you look at this arc, that's exactly what happens. But it's worth digging into that a bit because this is where a lot of Fujimoto's sensibilities come in. I think his character work here is some of the best so far, and most of it lies in Reze. Considering that she doesn't appear all that much in the larger Chainsaw Man story, the fact that she's so beloved is kind of wild. I mean, it's not surprising. She's a fully realized character with a messy history and complicated motivations. I think Fujimoto did a great job cramming in as much information as he possibly could into such a short amount of time. Part of that comes down to the explanation Kishibe gives at the end, the reveal of the Soviet spy program Reze was a part of. It's a moment that's actually very reminiscent of the movie Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. If you don't know, near the very end of the movie, a psychiatrist pretty much explains everything going on with Norman Bates. His trauma, split personality, all of it laid out plainly. There's no allegory, no ambiguity, it's just exposition. The scene itself is actually a bit polarizing in what is otherwise considered a masterpiece. Even Hitchcock wasn't the biggest fan of it. But like I said, Kishibe does the exact same thing, to the point where I wouldn't be too surprised if this part was influenced either by Hitchcock or by film noir in general. Fujimoto is a film buff after all, so it's not out of the question. But what this moment does is provide context, a lot of it too. In both Psycho and Chainsaw Man, these reveals recontextualize a lot of what came before. In Psycho, it makes Norman a lot more sympathetic, a figure genuinely shy and meek, tortured by his own psyche. And for Reze, it makes her a tragic figure. Her actions are more complicated than it first appears. The day of my date with Jane, all is ready. We'll drink coffee and eat omelets at the cafe. After, we'll walk in the park and visit the aquarium to see Jane's favorite dolphins and penguins. We'll rest in the afternoon, and at night, sleep in the church. That's the song Reze sings when killing an assassin, a rough translation from Russian. It's a harsh contrast from the violent act she's currently engaging in, but pair that with the backstory and it paints her in a totally different light. The song comes off as a prayer, a wish, for a life she never had. Her questions to Denji about going to school, the comments about how he's being used by public safety, all revealing moments about things she actually believes. It's a life we know she lived, and for a brief moment, the mask she hides behind starts to slip. In this rom-com, Reze is the jaded lover, the one who enters the relationship under false pretenses. She begins this arc as a weapon, one that aims to lure Denji in for a kill. But this trope relies on reversals, and for Reze, it begins with a flower. I like to think that she had every intention of killing Denji in that phone booth, tight and enclosed. It would have been the perfect time to do it. But before she could, Denji does something she just wasn't expecting. He vomits up a flower. You see, Fujimoto has this habit of pairing very sincere acts with something grotesque. Personally, I think of it as a way to mask the discomfort of sincerity in something digestible. If Denji just gave her a flower, plain and simple, she probably would have killed him on the spot. But this moment is so weirdly sincere, filled with such hope and naivete, that I think she decides not to do it and instead chooses to play with him a bit more. A predator toying with its prey. But I also see this moment as the first time her persona cracks, an assassin disarmed by the absurdity of the situation and because she's a bit weird herself. And it's this exact moment that Reze fails her mission, whether she realizes it or not. Because now, she starts to connect with him. Denji is currently living the life she did, a weapon for the government whose sole purpose is to do their bidding. And that's what Reze connects with. What she sees in Denji is a person at the beginning of a journey she's been through before. All her questions, her comments, they're a way of reaching out to him, probing him, to see just how much they are alike. And so the jaded lover starts turning sincere, a bond formed from a shared trauma, a stolen innocence, a broken childhood, a life under the thumb of the state. Reze doesn't see what's happening within her. In this trope, the jaded lover almost never does. There's usually a moment where it all comes to a head spontaneously, and that happens in this story when Reze asks Denji to run away with her. Yes, I think this moment was real, unplanned and unexpected, even by Reze herself. It seems like an honest plea, because with everything we know about her backstory, her trauma, it's easy to understand what she sees in Denji. Someone just like her. The main difference is that Denji isn't broken yet. He still thinks he can be happy in a life without control. It's a mindset that Reze probably had before it died in the room she was kept in, alone in the world. I can imagine how comforting it is to find someone else out there, someone who can relate to the horrors you've been through, and how desperate you might be to make sure they don't end up in the same place you are now. When I hear Reze plead with Denji to run away, I hear someone calling out to a version of himself they thought was dead, trying to preserve what little innocence they have left. It's a mask-shattering moment for Reze, one where she tries to open up, and all of it turned out to be for nothing. I think the moment Denji rejected Reze's offer is the moment that thing she saw in him disappeared. He's a city mouse, unaware of any other life, doomed to be tortured by cats forever. You can call Denji dumb for that, but honestly, I get it. He's a broken kid who found a sliver of life for the first time ever. Is it really worth risking it all when you're barely hanging on? For his part, I think Denji made the best choice he could for how little he knows about the world. Power and Aki are the closest thing he has to family, and it's starting to get harder for him to give that up. That's the situation he finds himself in. The choice he was forced to make by Reze in a split second. And his fear that he shouldn't ask for more in life is made real by Reze's betrayal. Reze reveals her true nature in a strikingly similar way to Denji when he revealed his, and with that, a complete reversal of attitudes. The true nature of the relationship is exposed, and each party has switched sides. All that's left in this trope is for them to make up. What happens next is a conflict that's both physical and psychological, one where Reze and Denji trade chainsaws and bombs, all while trying to convince themselves that they don't feel what they really do. Denji is Denji, of course, trying to reconcile the honest moments they shared with Reze's betrayal. But you can see the part that admires Denji peek out of Reze at times too. She tries to coach him on how to fight as they trade fists, and laughs at Denji's absolutely brain-dead idea to ride Beam like a horse. Points for creativity, I'll give him that. Fights like this are more than just action, there are emotions laid bare. Like a musical bursting into song when the character's feelings overflow, the same is true here. It's a battle of desire and denial, a fight of feeling that they can't quite suppress, until they come out and literally explode. The fight ends with the imagery that they've come together in a moment that calls back to their time in the pool. Denji holds Reze closer than he ever has before, trying to force together the contradiction of emotions inside of them. And in that moment, it feels like they both give in to what they felt back then. A brief, impossible freedom, letting the memory settle and sink in. A quiet moment caps the entire fight, a stillness after the chaos that came before. On the beach, right at the edge of the waters that once brought them together. Denji and Reze try to bridge the distance between them one last time. The ocean beside them, the same waters they shared in unguarded honesty. The only place where either of them let their walls down. Denji inches towards sincerity, the possibility of a different life flickering in his mind for the first time. An offer to run away from it all, while Reze retreats from the waters. And for a moment, it's as if she tries to match that honesty, returning back to that tiny sliver of freedom they found in the pool. And then she snaps his neck. I don't see it as out of hatred, but out of fear. A fear of letting her walls down once again. A belief that it's an offer too good to be true. And so Denji collapses, the waves surrounding him, still trying to reach out to her, but it's the sincerity that surfaced and was met with distance. And so we come to the final act of this trope, a reconciliation, the moment where both parties realize the thing they have. Starting as opposites, they move to a reversal and finally enter a state of mutual understanding, a resolution. Reze at the train decides to go back to the cafe, back to where the lie she started began to grow into something more. Denji waiting for her, waiting for his feelings to be reassured. If it were any other story, these two would reunite as more than they were, a moment that brings this romantic comedy to an end. But this isn't just a romantic comedy, and this is where Fujimoto puts in his twist. Makima in this arc is not a rival lover. She's a cosmic force looming over everything. When decisions have been settled and the dice have been cast, Makima comes in to negate any choice that would have mattered. Cosmic horror is about revealing the insignificance of humanity and our choices, and I can't think of a better way to express that than this. A moment of reconciliation interrupted by an act of God, an angel coming down to break the logic of the trope. Makima operates on a scale beyond Reze's understanding, and in doing so, renders her choice meaningless, surrounded by all her sincerity that came too late. A pool of blood instead of the waters that evoked a freedom from a life that doesn't care. What we have here is a romantic comedy wrapped in cosmic horror, and what that leaves us with is the Fujimoto special, a melodrama. I don't say that as a pejorative. If you've watched my previous essay, you know I say that with love. This is a story driven mostly by emotion, not choice. Denji's choice at the end didn't matter. Reze's decision to come back was meaningless. What matters is the feeling Denji is left with as a result. I won't spoil what happens next if you haven't read ahead, although I suggest you do because the manga is really good. All I want to do is leave you with a feeling. So far, Denji has been a passive character, responding to the whims of the plot. And the first time he tries to assert himself, the story crushes it immediately. He doesn't know that what he did made Reze change. He doesn't know she tried to come back. All we see him with are flowers and an empty glass of water. His hope gone, his sincerity drained. The point of cosmic horror is to highlight humanity's lack of agency, and Denji hasn't realized that yet. What would it take for him to make that realization? What would he need to lose? The story is slowly starting to chip away at Denji's psyche, and when it does finally break, what would he do? What would he want? Those are the questions you should be left with after this arc, because the things that happen to Denji only get more extreme from here. But in this melodrama we're left with in this arc, we come away with tragedy. The city mouse finally chooses the countryside, only to walk away thinking he didn't, never realizing the choice was never his to begin with. Broken and bruised, the city mouse fled and sought his brother's farm. But as he neared, the air turned foul, a stench that rang alarms. The field was gone, the soil stained red, the mice left out to rot. The humans came to cleanse the land, and purity was bought. The city mouse wept, for now he knew how cruel the world could be. There was no city, no country life, only death, and the dream of being free. As always, thank you so much for watching. This came out a bit later than I was expecting, but I hope you don't mind. I'm in the middle of a lot of changes in my life, so I've been a bit busy, but I'm still committed to my journey here. So if you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, share this if you want. Every bit of support means the world to me, and if you want to support me even further, consider supporting me on Patreon. There you can get bonuses like scripts and direct downloads to the music I use for videos, because I write most of it if you didn't know, and for $5 you'll get your name at the end just like the fine people you just saw. But however you decide to support me, I really appreciate it, I really do. This will be the last video I make for the year. I have things planned for next year, and I really do want to continue doing this thing I love. But that's it from me. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and I hope to see you again in the next one. Shoots.